Ambassador Jack Reynolds adjusted his collar for the 7th time in as many minutes, not because the synthetic fabric of his formal diplomatic attire was uncomfortable. Earth's textile engineers had perfected comfort centuries ago, but because being the only human in a room full of aliens who could, with various appendages, tentacles, or mind powers, end his existence, made him just a tad nervous. "Stop fidgeting," muttered Luna, his AI assistant through the nearly invisible earpiece. "The Vrax delegation is interpreting it as a mating signal." Jack immediately dropped his hand. "Fantastic," he whispered. "Just what I need, a 7-foot-tall mantis-like creature with a crush." The Grand Council chamber of Neutral Station Epsilon-9 lived up to its name. The ceiling soared 50 meters above, dotted with hovering light orbs that mimicked the stars outside. Representatives from 27 species sat in a circular arrangement that supposedly represented equality, though Jack noticed the Dravidi ambassador had managed to position himself on a slightly elevated platform. Typical, the chamber buzzed with the sounds of universal translators working overtime, converting clicks, whistles, electromagnetic pulses, and pheromone bursts into something approximating meaningful dialogue. Jack's translator was government issue, meaning it worked about 60% of the time, and occasionally translated complex diplomatic overtures into food orders. "The summit will commence momentarily," announced Ambassador Thrix of the Andorian Confederation, his crystalline skin refracting light in hypnotic patterns. "We gather today to discuss the proposed expansion of the Galactic Free Trade Agreement and border security concerns in the Epsilon sector." Jack smiled pleasantly, revealing exactly the recommended amount of teeth to appear friendly without seeming threatening to carnivorous species. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Union 50 years ago, and they were still considered the upstarts, the newcomers, the "oh look they figured out faster than light travel how cute" species. Ambassador Krill, of the Treskalian Empire, snorted through his breathing tubes. "Perhaps we should address the Delvian incursions into the neutral zone, before discussing trade agreements that they will inevitably violate." And there it was, 5 minutes in, and the diplomatic knives were already out. The Delvian ambassador, a gelatinous mass of sentient blue goo named Glob, which Jack found both hilarious and impossible to pronounce with the required 17 separate tonal inflection, rippled angrily. "The Treskalian accusations are baseless propaganda," Glob's translator boomed, the blue mass wobbling indignantly. Perhaps if Ambassador Krill spent less time expanding his personal harem and more time reading intelligence reports, he would understand the situation better. Jack winced. Personal harems were a touchy subject for Treskalians, who considered them sacred family units rather than the sordid collections humans historically associated with the term. Ambassador Krill's scaled skin flushed deep crimson, and his ceremonial neck frill extended to full display, a warning sign that even humans with basic xenobiology training recognized as about to go ballistic. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of alien voices, each faction taking sides in the ancient Treskalian-Delvian feud. Jack caught fragments of arguments that referenced events that occurred when humans were still figuring out that fire was hot. Luna's voice chimed in his ear. "Conflict escalation detected. Diplomatic protocol suggests neutral intervention. Your approval rating among both factions currently sits at marginally tolerable, which is the highest of any representative present." Jack sighed. Being the least disliked person in the room wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement, but in interstellar diplomacy, you took what you could get. "Honored representatives," Jack said, rising to his full height of an unremarkable 180 centimeters, "perhaps we should remember that we're here to discuss trade agreements, not rehash conflicts from the Third Epoch." The chamber quieted, various alien eyes, sensory organs, and perception fields turning toward the human. The momentary silence felt like progress, until Ambassador Krill pointed all 3 of his primary arms at the Delvian. "The human speaks wisdom that the blob would do well to absorb, literally, in your case Glob. At least I don't need a specialized containment unit to prevent my pheromones from causing a mass reproductive event in the cafeteria," Glob retorted, referencing an infamous incident that diplomatic corps still referred to as the Great Spawning Disaster of 2179. Jack closed his eyes briefly. This was going to be a long day in a career already filled with too many long days. He glanced at his notepad, displaying profiles of each representative present, their strengths, weaknesses, cultural taboos, and in small encrypted text, the designation of the contingency plan Earth had for each species. Just in case, Jack watched as Ambassador Krill's ceremonial neck frill fully extended, displaying iridescent patterns that signaled extreme agitation to any Treskalian, and imminent violence to everyone else. The chamber's automated defense systems hummed to life, sensing the biochemical markers of aggression. The Triskelion Empire has endured the gelatinous lies of the Delvian Consortium for 12 generations, Krill bellowed, pounding his secondary fist on the council table. The reinforced material cracked slightly under the impact. First they undermine our mining operations in the Rigelian asteroid belt, then they sabotage our terraforming projects on Epsilon Eridani IV, and now they violate the sacred neutrality of the border regions. Glob undulated furiously, his blue mass shifting through various shades that Jack's cultural briefing had described as the spectrum of righteous indignation. Mining operations, is that what you call stripping habitable planets of resources, while indigenous species suffer? Glob's translation unit somehow managed to convey sarcasm, despite its flat monotone. The Delvian Consortium merely ensures that interplanetary regulations are followed, regulations that your brutish empire signed. Ambassador Thrix of the Andorian Confederation attempted to intervene, his crystalline voice chiming like breaking glass. Respected colleagues, this discourse is unproductive. Unproductive, interrupted Krill, his translator struggling to keep up with his rapid-fire clicks and whistles. The Delvians have positioned plasma cannons disguised as research equipment along our shared border. We have visual evidence. Doctored recordings, Glob countered, a pseudopod extending to display a competing hologram. Meanwhile, Triskelion warships conduct training exercises within striking distance of our colony worlds. Jack fought the urge to massage his temples. The headaches that accompanied these summits were legendary. His AI assistant Luna was busy cataloging every accusation, threat, and posture change, cross-referencing them with historical databases to calculate the likelihood of actual conflict. Ambassador Reynolds, Luna whispered in his ear, probability of physical altercation rising to 63%. Recommend diplomatic intervention using humor to diffuse tension. Right, humor, because that always translated well across species. Jack recalled the diplomatic incident when a human ambassador had attempted to tell a knock-knock joke to the Zarg, a species that communicated primarily through bioluminescence and had no concept of doors. The situation was rapidly devolving. Ambassador Krill had produced what looked suspiciously like a ceremonial dagger, though he claimed it was a traditional eating utensil. Glob had begun secreting a fluid that Jack's sensors warned was mildly corrosive. If I may, Jack said, rising to his feet again. When no one acknowledged him, he picked up his metal water cup and tapped it against the table. The sharp ping cut through the noise. Honored representatives, he continued, his voice firm yet neutral, as the newest member of the Galactic Union, Earth has observed these regional disputes with interest. While we don't presume to understand the deep historical context, perhaps a fresh perspective might be valuable. This garnered some attention. Most species were curious about human diplomatic approaches, if only because humans were still an enigma. Too aggressive for peaceful species, too accommodating for warrior cultures, too individualistic for hive minds, yet somehow advanced enough to join galactic society. The evidence presented by both sides suggests misunderstanding rather than malice, Jack continued smoothly. Perhaps a joint inspection team consisting of neutral parties could. Misunderstanding, Ambassador Krill interrupted, his translator struggling to convey the full depth of his indignation. The Delvians have been executing Plan Omega-7 against us for decades. Their strategy is transparent to anyone with functioning sensory organs. Jack blinked. Plan Omega-7? You believe they have a specific operational plan against your people? Of course they do, Krill hissed. All advanced species maintain strategic contingencies against potential adversaries. It is the foundation of intelligent civilization. Several other ambassadors nodded or made their species-equivalent gestures of agreement. The hive representative pulsed with electromagnetic signals that Jack's translator rendered as obviously. Preparation equals survival. Jack shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware that he might have revealed something he shouldn't through his surprise. But the conversation had already moved on. The Delvian Consortium maintains no such plan, Glob protested, though with a ripple pattern that Luna's analysis flagged as deceptive behavior indicators. Perhaps not called Omega-7, Krill retorted. But you have your schemes. All of you do. He gestured broadly at the assembled representatives. The Andorians have their crystalline archives of weaknesses for every species. The Vrax maintain their theoretical exercises that miraculously match our patrol routes. Even the Terrans, new as they are, surely have. Plan 17B, actually, Jack said, then immediately wished he could retract the words. The sleep deprivation and frustration had momentarily bypassed his diplomatic filter. The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye, sensory organ and perception field turned toward the human ambassador. The silence stretched so long that Jack began to wonder if his translator had malfunctioned. Luna's voice came through his earpiece, usually calm but now carrying a note of alarm. Ambassador, that information is classified under Directive 2194C. Recommend immediate strategic backtracking. Too late. Ambassador Krill's neck frill had partially retracted in surprise. Plan 17B. Jack's mind raced through damage control scenarios. Deny it, laugh it off as a human joke, claim diplomatic immunity and run for the nearest escape pod. Before he could decide, Glob undulated forward. The humans have designated contingency plans for other species, specifically numbered. I think, Jack said carefully, we've strayed from the matter at hand, which is the border dispute in the Epsilon sector. Answer the question, Ambassador Reynolds, demanded Thrix, crystalline surfaces glinting dangerously. Does Earth maintain strategic contingency plans against other members of the Galactic Union? Jack took a deep breath, adjusting his collar for the 8th time. I think it's fair to say that all responsible governments maintain preparedness protocols for various scenarios, designated as Plan 17B for Triskelions, specifically. Krill noted, his voice unnervingly calm now, which implies the existence of Plans 1 through 16, multiple variants, and presumably plans for other species as well. Jack felt the familiar sensation of a diplomatic situation spiraling out of control. The Earth contingency plans were supposed to be among the most closely guarded secrets of the Terran diplomatic corps, and yet here he was, having casually dropped their existence into the middle of an already tense intergalactic summit. Ambassador Reynolds. Luna's voice came through his earpiece, detecting increased neural activity from telepathic species present. Recommend activating psionic interference device. Great, now the mind readers were getting curious too. Jack discreetly tapped his wrist device to activate the psionic scrambler, standard precaution in diplomatic meetings. I believe, said the Vrax ambassador, mandibles clicking thoughtfully, that the human ambassador has something very interesting to share with us all. Jack Reynolds stared at the expectant faces and face-adjacent sensory clusters of the assembled galactic representatives. His diplomatic training had covered many scenarios: hostage situations, cultural faux pas, accidentally consuming sacred alien foodstuffs, but accidentally revealing the existence of humanity's secret contingency plans for every sentient species hadn't been in the manual. Luna, he whispered through barely moving lips. Options. His AI assistant processed for what felt like an eternity, but was actually 1.2 seconds. 2 viable approaches: deny with plausible explanation, or control the narrative through selective disclosure. Denial probability of success, 23%. Controlled disclosure, 58%. Neither option was great, but Jack had worked with worse odds. He straightened his shoulders and adopted what he hoped was a disarming smile. Colleagues, I think there's been a misunderstanding, he began. Ambassador Krill's neck frill fluttered with what Jack recognized as skepticism. A specific designation of Plan 17B seems difficult to misunderstand, Ambassador Reynolds. Perhaps the human misspoke, offered Ambassador Thrix, though his crystalline surfaces refracted light in patterns indicating doubt. Or perhaps, burbled Glob, we've finally glimpsed the true nature of our newest galactic neighbors. Jack could feel the situation deteriorating. The Vrax representative's mandibles were clicking rapidly, a sign of agitation, or possibly anticipation of a good meal. With insectoid species, it was often hard to tell the difference. Very well, Jack said, making a show of reluctance. In the interest of transparency, which Earth values greatly, I can confirm that yes, the United Earth government maintains contingency plans for various diplomatic and security scenarios, including scenarios where you neutralize other sentient species. Asked the Hive representative, its electromagnetic pulses sharp with alarm. Neutralize is a strong word, Jack countered. We prefer prepared for a variety of outcomes. A murmur passed through the chamber. Jack was losing them. Time for a different approach. Look, he said, leaning forward and adopting a conspiratorial tone that he knew the universal translators would convey appropriately. We all know everyone does this. The Andorians have their crystalline archives cataloging weaknesses. The Vrax have their theoretical exercises. Everyone prepares for worst-case scenarios. But not everyone names their plans so, specifically, noted Ambassador Thrix. Plan 17B suggests remarkable detail. Jack considered his next words carefully. Luna was frantically accessing classified files, seeking guidance on what could be safely revealed. The truth is, Jack said, Earth has always been cautious. When we were still planet-bound, we developed contingency plans for everything from asteroid impacts to zombie outbreaks. Zombies? Queried the Vrax representative, mandibles quivering. Reanimated corpses. It's a whole thing, never actually happened, but we had plans anyway. Jack explained with a dismissive wave. My point is, planning is in our nature. When we joined the Galactic community, our Security Council simply continued the tradition. Ambassador, Luna whispered urgently, clearance granted for historical context protocol. Limited disclosure authorized. Jack nodded imperceptibly, grateful for whoever at Mission Control had made that quick decision. Perhaps it would help to understand how these plans came about, he offered. The chamber had grown eerily quiet, all representatives fixated on the human. Jack took a deep breath and began the carefully curated history lesson. 53 Earth years ago, when the Andorian scout ship made first contact with our Mars colony, humanity experienced what we now call the oh shit moment. The universal translators paused briefly before rendering the idiom appropriately for each species. Suddenly, we weren't alone in the universe, and we were technologically outmatched by virtually everyone. Our entire history is filled with more powerful groups encountering less advanced ones, and it rarely ended well for the latter. Jack pulled up historical images on the chamber's display system. European colonization, indigenous populations, decimated by disease and superior weaponry, cultural annihilation. We formed the Terran Contingency Council within days of first contact, Jack continued. Not because we expected hostility, but because we've learned from our own history that hope is not a strategy. He brought up new images, Earth's gleaming cities, the Mars and Europa colonies, human ships alongside alien vessels. As we learned more about galactic society and made friends, he nodded respectfully to various ambassadors. Many plans were revised or abandoned. But yes, we maintained contingencies for natural disasters, diplomatic crises, cultural misunderstandings, and yes, for conflict scenarios. Show us, demanded Ambassador Krill, his neck frill fully extended. If these are merely prudent preparations as you claim, there should be no harm in sharing. Luna's voice was tight with tension. Ambassador, limited disclosure only. Classification level 3 maximum. Jack nodded again, and called up a heavily redacted document on the main display. This is the general framework for Plan 17, which addresses scenarios involving Triskelion interaction. Subsection B specifically covers diplomatic contingencies. The document showed flowcharts, decision trees, and response matrices, most content blacked out, but enough visible to demonstrate its systematic nature. This isn't a plan for aggression, Jack explained. It's a framework for responses to various scenarios, from trade disputes to cultural exchanges to, yes, potential conflicts. And you have these for all of us? Asked Glob, his blue mass pulsating with what appeared to be alarm. Jack hesitated. We have analytical frameworks for significant galactic actors. Show mine, demanded the Vrax representative, mandibles clicking rapidly. I'm not authorized to. If you expect us to believe these are benign, prove it, insisted Ambassador Thrix. Luna's voice was sharp in Jack's ear. Additional clearance granted. Display Plan 24A, minimally redacted. This was spiraling out of control. Jack displayed the Vrax contingency plan, similar in structure but with different response matrices and scenarios. For the next 20 minutes, Jack found himself in the uncomfortable position of revealing, in very limited form, the existence of contingency plans for nearly every species present. The Hive plan focused heavily on communication protocols. The Andorian plan emphasized trade relationships. The Delvian plan contained extensive sections on environmental compatibility. These all seem thorough, Ambassador Thrix finally acknowledged. But why so many variations? Asked Krill. You mentioned 17B specifically. How many versions exist? Jack winced internally. The letter designations represent scenario variations. Plan 17A might address diplomatic relations with Triskelion core worlds, while 17B covers border regions. 17C involves multi-species scenarios, including Triskelions, and so on. And the numbering system, pressed glob, general classification areas, Jack explained, stretching the truth slightly. Single digits are natural phenomena. 10p19 are species with exoskeletons. 20 mini-p9 are species with endoskeletons. 30 mini-p9 are non-corporeal entities. Your system catalogs our biological characteristics as primary identifier. The Vrax representative sounded offended, which was saying something for a species that communicated largely through pheromones. It's simply an organizational tool, Jack insisted. Like how the Galactic Union categorizes planets by atmospheric composition rather than alphabetically. The chamber had grown tense again. Jack could sense the representatives reassessing Earth and humanity. This wasn't going according to plan, not that there was a specific contingency for accidentally revealing the contingency plans, though Jack would ensure one existed after this. I believe, said Ambassador Thrix, his crystalline voice cutting through the tension, that we should return to our original agenda. Border security concerns in the Epsilon sector now seem particularly relevant. Jack nodded gratefully, hoping the moment had passed, but as he glanced around the chamber, he noted several representatives using communication devices, undoubtedly reporting to their governments about this new information. The diplomatic incident was just beginning. Luna's voice came through his earpiece, unnervingly calm. Ambassador. Mission Control acknowledges situation. Contingency Plan 0Z has been activated. Jack nearly choked. Plan 0Z was the scenario no one wanted to discuss. Full diplomatic breakdown with multiple species simultaneously. Things were about to get a lot worse before they got better. Ambassador Reynolds, the Vrax representative, clicked, mandibles working overtime in what Jack recognized as their species' version of nervous agitation. You expect us to believe that your cataloging of our biological characteristics is merely organizational. Jack maintained his diplomatic smile, while mentally running through the ever-shrinking list of options. Plan 0Z involved a series of escalating response protocols, none of which seemed appropriate for a situation he had caused by running his mouth. As I've explained, Jack said, the numerical system is simply administrative, no different than how the Galactic Union uses sector designations, or how the Andorian archives categorize historical events by stellar alignment. And yet, Ambassador Krill interjected, neck frill fluttering with skepticism, I cannot help but notice that the contingency plans you've shown us are suspiciously sanitized, almost as if they were prepared specifically for this revelation. Damn, the Triskelions were more perceptive than Earth's intelligence reports suggested, or perhaps Krill was simply paranoid enough to accidentally hit the truth. I assure you these are genuine documents, Jack replied, which was technically true. They were genuine, just heavily redacted and carefully selected to appear benign. Luna whispered in his earpiece, Ambassador, detecting elevated security scans directed at your position. The Hive representative appears to be attempting to access your neural patterns. Psionic Scrambler at 82% capacity. Perfect. Now they were trying to read his mind. Perhaps, Ambassador Thrix suggested, crystalline surfaces glinting diplomatically, the human would be willing to share a more comprehensive example, to demonstrate the truly defensive nature of these contingencies. The chamber fell silent, all attention on Jack. He needed a safe example, something detailed enough to satisfy their curiosity without revealing Earth's actual strategic vulnerabilities or offensive capabilities. Luna, options, he subvocalized. Searching archives, the AI responded. Recommend Plan 42D, classified Level 2, primarily defensive, contains sufficient detail to appear comprehensive without compromising security. Plan 42D, Jack searched his memory. That was the Rigelian contingency for diplomatic breakdown. The Rigelians had gone extinct 3 centuries before humans achieved spaceflight, making them a safe example. Very well, Jack said, calling up the file. I am authorized to share Plan 42D, which was developed when we first discovered evidence of the Rigelian civilization. The display showed a far more detailed plan, with minimal redactions. It outlined protocols for everything from peaceful contact to hostile engagement with a species humanity had only known through archaeological evidence. As you can see, Jack explained, the plan begins with communication protocols, moves through cultural exchange possibilities, scientific cooperation frameworks, and only in the final sections addresses defensive measures if hostility were encountered. The representative studied the documents with various expressions of what Jack interpreted as reluctant interest. This seems reasonably thorough, admitted Ambassador Thrix after a moment. For a species you never actually met, Glob pointed out, his blue mass rippling skeptically. What about plans for those of us actually in this room? Jack's collar suddenly felt tight again. As I've shown, the basic structure is similar but with many more specific details, I imagine, interrupted Krill. Tell me, Ambassador Reynolds, what exactly does Plan 17B recommend if a Triskelion Empire cruiser approaches Earth space without authorization? The question was a trap. Jack knew it, Krill knew it, everyone in the chamber knew it. The actual answer was deploy gravitational disruptors to disable their propulsion systems, which rely on specific gravimetric frequencies to function properly, a vulnerability that Triskelions believed no one else had identified. Standard hailing protocols followed by escalating alert levels if communication isn't established, Jack said instead. No different than any other species. Krill's neck frill fluttered in what Jack recognized as the Triskelion equivalent of rolling one's eyes. How remarkably generic. And for the Delvians? Asked the Vrax representative, mandibles clicking with interest. What contingencies exist for their particular fluidity? Jack felt sweat forming at his temples. The Delvian plan actually included using specific sound frequencies that caused their molecular structure to temporarily solidify, effectively paralyzing them. Environmental containment protocols appropriate for their biochemistry, he answered vaguely. Glob rippled angrily. You mean you would attempt to freeze us? Our intelligence reports indicate Earth has developed sonic technology specifically calibrated to disrupt our molecular cohesion. The chamber erupted in alarm. Apparently Earth wasn't the only one with intelligence on other species' vulnerabilities. That's not, Jack began, but was interrupted by Ambassador Krill. And what of the Triskelion vulnerability to gravitational manipulation? Does Plan 17B exploit that as well? Now Jack was genuinely surprised. You're aware of that vulnerability. The moment the words left his mouth, he realized his mistake. The chamber fell silent again as everyone processed the implications. Not only did Earth have contingency plans, but they had identified weaknesses that some species thought were secret. I mean, Jack attempted to backtrack, but it was too late. The humans know our vulnerabilities and have planned specifically how to exploit them, Krill announced to the chamber at large. This goes beyond reasonable security measures. Luna's voice was urgent in Jack's ear. Ambassador Mission Control advises implementing diplomatic reset protocol. Hierarchy authorization required. Jack nodded imperceptibly. The diplomatic reset was a last resort, essentially admitting a mistake and seeking to restart the conversation from a position of honesty. It rarely worked, but the alternatives were worse. Honored representatives, Jack said, raising his voice over the growing commotion. I believe we should address the gravitational elephant in the room. The universal translators paused again at the idiom before rendering it appropriately. Yes, Earth maintains detailed contingency plans. Yes, those plans include information about potential vulnerabilities of various species. And yes, they include protocols that could be used defensively if necessary. The chamber remained tense, but at least they were listening. But perhaps what's most telling, Jack continued, is that despite having these plans for 50 years, we've never once implemented the hostile components, never once exploited a vulnerability, never once taken aggressive action against any Galactic Union member. He pulled up a new display showing the history of Earth's diplomatic relations, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific collaborations, joint defense exercises. Our contingency plans exist precisely because we want to avoid conflict. By understanding vulnerabilities, ours and others, we can work to prevent situations where they might be exploited. A convenient justification, muttered Ambassador Krill. Is it? Jack countered. The Triskelion Empire maintains a fleet specifically designed to operate in methane-rich atmospheres, environments where Delvians cannot maintain molecular cohesion. Are we to believe this is coincidental? Krill's neck frill flattened defensively, and the Andorian defense grid, Jack continued, calibrated to the exact frequency that disrupts Vrax's neural patterns. Another coincidence. Ambassador Thrix's crystalline surfaces darkened slightly. We all maintain capabilities that could exploit others' vulnerabilities, Jack pressed. The difference is that humans are paranoid enough to systematize it. And name it Plan 17B, added Glob, though his tone had shifted from accusatory to something closer to grudging respect. Honestly, Jack admitted, the naming system is mostly because humans are terrible at remembering things without catchy labels. This elicited what Jack hoped was the alien equivalent of chuckles from several representatives. The tension in the chamber had decreased slightly, but Jack knew he wasn't out of the woods yet. Luna was still feeding him alarming security alerts. Several species had placed their military forces on elevated alert status. Others were requesting emergency meetings with Earth representatives on their home worlds. Perhaps, offered Ambassador Thrix after a moment, the human perspective has merit. Preparation needn't indicate hostile intent, though it does indicate a disturbing level of intelligence gathering, countered the Vrax representative. Coming from a species that employs empathic parasites as spies, that's rich, Jack thought but didn't say. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully. Intelligence gathering is a reality of interstellar relations. Earth is simply more systematic in how we process and prepare based on that intelligence, and more careless in revealing it, added Krill, though without the earlier hostility. Jack managed a self-deprecating smile. On that point, Ambassador, I cannot disagree. The diplomatic crisis wasn't over, not by a long shot. But the immediate danger of multiple species severing relations with Earth appeared to be receding. Jack allowed himself to breathe a bit easier. A mistake, as it turned out. The chamber's entry portal slid open with a hiss, and a junior Andorian aide rushed in, crystalline structure pulsing with alarm patterns. The aide approached Ambassador Thrix and communicated in rapid, private tones. Thrix's crystalline body darkened dramatically, the Andorian equivalent of a human going pale with shock. Representatives, Thrix announced, his usually melodious voice sharp with urgency. I have just received word that an unidentified vessel has breached the station's outer defense perimeter. It is not responding to hails, and is approaching at attack velocity. The chamber erupted into chaos. Luna, Jack whispered urgently. What the hell is happening? Unknown vessel confirmed, Luna responded, her tone clipped and professional. No identification match in Earth databases. Scanning energy signatures now. As the representatives panicked around him, Jack couldn't help but wonder if perhaps Earth's paranoid preparation might prove useful after all. The Grand Council chamber descended into barely controlled chaos. Representatives shouted over each other while their translator units struggled to keep up, creating a garbled mess of alien languages, electronic voices and alarm signals. Ambassador Thrix's crystalline form pulsed with emergency patterns as he attempted to maintain order. Please remain calm. Station security protocols are activating. Remain calm. Ambassador Krill's neck frill extended to its full threatening display. An unidentified vessel approaching at attack velocity, after we've just learned that humans maintain detailed plans to exploit all our vulnerabilities. This is clearly a coordinated Earth operation. Jack felt 27 pairs of alien eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, turned toward him with expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hostility. I assure you, Jack said, raising his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of innocence. Earth has nothing to do with this. A convenient crisis to demonstrate the value of your contingency plans, hissed the Vrax representative, mandibles clicking aggressively. Luna's voice came through his earpiece. Ambassador, preliminary scans complete. The vessel matches no known configuration in our databases, but energy signatures suggest technology far beyond current Galactic Union capabilities. Jack's blood ran cold. If Earth wasn't behind this, and no known galactic species matched the profile, the station's alert system blared to life, bathing the chamber in pulsing red light. A computerized voice announced, "Security breach detected. Unknown entities have boarded Level 7. All personnel implement Security Protocol Omega." The chamber fell silent for a moment, as the implications sank in. Level 7 was just 2 decks below the council chamber. We need to evacuate, Jack announced, already moving toward the emergency exit. Luna, station layout. Uploading to your neural display now, his AI responded. A schematic appeared in Jack's field of vision, highlighting evacuation routes and security checkpoints. Representatives, Jack called out, we should proceed to the diplomatic shuttle bay on Level 3. It's the most defensible position with evacuation capabilities. Why should we follow you? Demanded Glob, his blue mass pulsating with agitation. For all we know, this is Plan 17 whatever being implemented. Jack fought down a surge of irritation. Because at this moment, I'm the only one offering a plan at all. A distant explosion rocked the station, causing the lights to flicker. That seemed to decide matters for most of the representatives. Lead the way, Ambassador Reynolds, Thrix conceded, his crystalline voice tight with stress. Jack moved quickly to the emergency exit, checking the schematic Luna had provided. We need to take the auxiliary transport tube 3 junctions. then access the emergency ladder system. The main lifts will be locked down during a security alert. As the representatives filed through the exit, Luna continued feeding information into Jack's ear. Station security feeds show unknown lifeforms moving through Level 7. Humanoid, but with significant biomodifications. They appear to be scanning for something, or someone. Weapons, Jack whispered. Advanced energy projectors, unlike any Earth or Galactic Union design. The diplomatic party moved as quickly as diversity and locomotion allowed. The Delvians flowed efficiently, while the Triskelions moved with impressive speed despite their exoskeletal structure. The Vrax representatives scuttled along the ceiling, using their adhesive limbs to advantage. The Hive representative had simply disassembled into thousands of smaller units that moved as a coordinated swarm. They reached the first junction when another explosion, much closer this time, shook the corridor. The lights failed completely, plunging them into darkness before emergency illumination kicked in with a dim blue glow. Luna, status, Jack demanded. Unknown entities have reached level 6 and are moving upward. Their trajectory suggests they're heading directly for the council chamber, so they're looking for us, Jack concluded grimly. It appears so, Ambassador. Jack made a quick decision. Change of plan. Everyone follow me. He turned down a different corridor than originally planned. Where are you taking us, human? Demanded Krill, suspicion evident in his voice. To the station's security center on level 4, Jack explained as they moved. We need to understand what we're facing before we try to evacuate. And you just happen to know the location of this station's secure facilities? Asked Glob skeptically. Jack didn't bother responding. Of course Earth knew the layout of every diplomatic station in the Galactic Union. That was just basic preparedness. The fact that other species apparently didn't maintain similar knowledge was frankly concerning. They reached a sealed security door. Jack pressed his diplomatic credentials against the scanner, but nothing happened. Station systems are compromised, Luna informed him. Security protocols have been overridden. Wonderful, Jack muttered. He turned to the assembled representatives. Anyone have high-level security access? Ambassador Thrix stepped forward, his crystalline body pulsing with light patterns. The Andorian Confederation maintains security oversight of this station. He pressed his crystalline appendage against the scanner, which flickered briefly before the door slid open. The security center was unmanned. The regular personnel had likely evacuated or responded to the breach. Multiple screens showed various sections of the station, several displaying static or distorted images. Luna, can you interface with the station systems? Jack asked. Attempting connection now, the AI responded. Limited access achieved. Most systems are being actively suppressed by an unknown protocol. The representatives gathered around the displays, watching with various expressions of alarm as the intruders methodically moved through the station. The beings were roughly humanoid, but with strange shifting exoskeletons that seemed to adapt to their environment. Their movements were unnervingly coordinated. What are they? Whispered Ambassador Thrix. Jack studied the footage closely. I don't recognize the species, but their tactical movement suggests military training. They're clearing rooms systematically, not randomly searching, as if they know exactly what they're looking for, added Krill, his earlier hostility toward Jack temporarily forgotten in the face of a common threat. A thought struck Jack. Luna, compare these intruders to the contingency files for unidentified species encounters. There was a brief pause before Luna responded. Partial match with theoretical profile in Plan 64X. Jack froze. Plan 64X was one of Earth's most speculative contingencies, a plan for encountering advanced species from beyond known space. The X designation meant it was considered highly unlikely, but potentially catastrophic. What is Plan 64X? Demanded Glob, who had been close enough to overhear Luna's response through Jack's earpiece. Jack hesitated only briefly before deciding that transparency was the best approach. It's Earth's contingency for encountering advanced species from outside known space. The plan theorizes that such species might have been observing galactic civilization for some time, and would have specific strategic objectives if they chose to reveal themselves, such as capturing representatives of major galactic powers, suggested Ambassador Thrix. Exactly, Jack confirmed. Which is why we need to implement the defensive measures outlined in the plan. And those would be, prompted Krill. Jack turned to face the assembled representatives. Plan 64X suggests that unknown advanced species would likely have technological capabilities beyond our understanding. Conventional defensive measures would be ineffective. That's not reassuring, human, clicked the Vrax representative. I'm not finished, Jack continued. The plan theorizes that such species would rely heavily on advanced sensory and information gathering systems, meaning our best defense is to confuse those systems. Jack turned back to the security console. Luna, can you access the station's environmental controls? Limited access only, Ambassador. What parameters are you looking to modify? We need to implement ECM pattern delta across all available systems. The representatives exchanged confused glances. ECM pattern delta, inquired Ambassador Thrix. Electronic countermeasures, Jack explained. Specifically, a randomized pattern of system fluctuations designed to create maximum sensory confusion for advanced technological systems. Jack began typing rapidly on the console, implementing the protocols from Plan 64X, while Luna provided guidance. You're attempting to confuse their sensors, Krill realized, neck frill extending slightly with what appeared to be grudging respect. Exactly, Jack confirmed. If they can't find us, they can't capture us. Luna, status of station security forces, overwhelmed or neutralized on levels 5 through 7. Remaining forces have established defensive positions on levels 2 and 3. Jack nodded grimly. We need to reach those forces. Luna, begin implementing ECM pattern delta, maximum dispersion. The station's systems began behaving erratically. Lights flickered in random patterns, environmental systems cycled unpredictably, and security screens displayed shifting, contradictory information. This should buy us some time, Jack explained. Now we move to Phase 2, which is, demanded Glob. Jack smiled grimly. Now we use what we know about each other's species to create a defense the intruders won't be expecting. The representatives exchanged glances, a new understanding dawning. Perhaps Earth's contingency plans weren't just paranoia after all. Luna, Jack said quietly, implement Plan 0M. Ambassador, Luna responded. That plan requires direct cooperation from multiple species. Are you certain? Jack looked around at the gathered representatives, species that minutes earlier had been outraged at Earth's contingency planning, now looking to him for leadership. I'm certain, he confirmed, because now we get to show these intruders why you don't mess with the Galactic Union, especially when we have a plan. Plan 0M. Ambassador Krill's neck frill fluttered in confusion. Another contingency. Multi-species cooperative defense, Jack explained, moving quickly between control stations. It's exactly what it sounds like, a plan that utilizes the unique capabilities of multiple species working in concert. You have a plan specifically for different species defending themselves together. Glob's blue mass rippled with what Jack interpreted as surprise. Of course we do, Jack replied, not looking up from the console. Humanity's greatest strength has always been cooperation. Why wouldn't we plan for it on a galactic scale? Luna's voice came through his earpiece. Ambassador, intruders have reached level 5 and are moving methodically. ECM pattern delta is slowing them, but their technology is adapting. Jack nodded. Representatives, I know we've had our differences today, but right now we have a common enemy. Plan 0M outlines specific roles based on each species' unique abilities. If you're willing to trust me, I believe we can repel these intruders. The aliens exchanged glances, communicating in their species-specific ways. Jack held his breath. After all the diplomatic damage he'd caused earlier, would they really trust a human now? Ambassador Thrix was the first to step forward, his crystalline form glinting resolutely. The Andorian Confederation stands with Earth. The Treskalian Empire will fight, declared Krill, neck frill extending to its full intimidation display. One by one, the representatives pledged their cooperation. Even Glob, his blue mass pulsating with what appeared to be determined ripples, agreed to participate. Excellent, Jack said, relief evident in his voice. Luna, display Plan 0M tactical assignments. The main screen flickered to life, showing a schematic of the station with position assignments and tactical roles for each species. Andorians, Jack began, your crystalline forms can refract energy weapons. You'll form our front line of defense at these junctions. He pointed to critical corridors on the display. Treskalians, your exoskeletal strength makes you ideal for close quarters combat if the barriers are breached. Position yourselves here and here. Ambassador Krill clicked his approval, already coordinating with other Treskalian representatives. Vrax, your ability to move along any surface gives you a tactical advantage. We need you positioned here, above the main approach corridors, ready to drop down behind the intruders. The Vrax representatives chittered in agreement, mandibles clicking with what Jack hoped was anticipation rather than hunger. Delvians, Jack continued, turning to Glob, Your fluid nature makes you perfect for sabotage. Can you flow through the environmental conduits and disable these junction points? He highlighted several areas on the schematic. Glob undulated in agreement. It will be done. Jack continued assigning roles to each species based on their unique biological advantages. The hive representative would disperse throughout the ventilation system as surveillance. The methane-breathing Kaptari would flood specific sections with their natural exhalations, creating zones toxic to most carbon-based lifeforms. For 20 minutes, the security center buzzed with activity as the representatives coordinated with their species members throughout the station. Jack felt a surge of pride. Despite their earlier anger at his contingency plans, they were now implementing one together. Ambassador, Luna interrupted. Intruders have adapted to ECM pattern Delta. They're approaching level 4. Estimated time to breach 3 minutes. Jack nodded grimly. Everyone to your positions. Remember, communication is key. Use frequency channel Delta 9 for coordination. As the representatives departed to their assigned positions, Ambassador Thrix lingered behind. Ambassador Reynolds, I must admit I underestimated the value of your contingency planning. Jack managed a tense smile. Let's hope it works as well in practice as it does in theory. Thrix's crystalline surface rippled with what Jack recognized as the Andorian equivalent of a determined nod before he departed. Luna, status of Plan 0M implementation. All species moving to assigned positions. Defensive preparations at 78% completion. Jack took a deep breath. And what about the package? En route to your location. Arrival in 30 seconds. Jack allowed himself a small smile. The package was the final component of Plan 0 MENA, specialized piece of Earth technology that had been secretly installed on all major diplomatic stations, dormant until needed. The security center door slid open, and a maintenance drone rolled in, carrying a sleek metal case bearing Earth's diplomatic seal. Jack pressed his palm against the biometric lock, and the case hissed open. Inside was what appeared to be a simple handheld device, unremarkable except for the faint blue glow emanating from its core. Luna, initialize the Babel protocol. Initializing, the AI confirmed as Jack removed the device. Calibration complete. The translator field is ready for activation. Jack attached the device to his wrist. Unlike standard universal translators that converted languages after they were spoken, the Babel device, named after an ancient Earth myth, worked preemptively, creating a field that allowed instant perfect understanding between all species within range. It was perhaps Earth's most closely guarded technological achievement, developed specifically for Plan 0M, because as humanity had learned repeatedly throughout its history, miscommunication during battle could be fatal. Ambassador, Luna's voice was urgent. Intruders have breached level 4 perimeter. Defensive positions engaged. On the security monitors, Jack watched as the plan unfolded. Andorian representatives formed living barriers, their crystalline bodies refracting the intruders' energy weapons. Triskelions moved with surprising coordination, engaging in close-quarters combat when barriers were breached. Vrax's representatives dropped from ceilings onto unsuspecting intruders, and it was working. The intruders, despite their advanced technology, seemed unprepared for the coordinated defense utilizing such diverse biological capabilities. Jack activated the Babel device, and moved quickly to the command position they had established at the junction of 2 main corridors. Representatives from each species had been designated as tactical coordinators, and they gathered around him. Status report, Jack ordered. The Babel device ensuring perfect understanding. Andorian barriers holding at junctions 4A and 4C, reported the Andorian coordinator. Junction 4B, breached but contained by Triskelion forces. Delvian sabotage successful, added Glob, who had rejoined them. Environmental controls in sectors 4-2 through 4-5 are now under our control. Intruders in those sectors are experiencing rapid temperature fluctuations and atmospheric composition changes. Vrax ambush teams have neutralized 14 intruders, chittered the Vrax coordinator. Their adaptive armor is impressive but vulnerable at joint points. Jack nodded. Excellent work. Maintain pressure. Luna, what's happening with the intruder's ship? Station defense systems have been partially restored. The vessel remains outside weapon range, but has ceased approach. For 15 tense minutes, the battle continued. The intruders fought skillfully, but seemed increasingly confused by the coordinated defense. Their technology was indeed advanced, but they hadn't anticipated facing such diverse biological capabilities working in concert. Finally, Luna reported, Ambassador, intruders are retreating. They appear to be returning to their vessel. A cheer went up from the assembled coordinators. translated perfectly by the Babel device into each species' expression of victory. We did it. Ambassador Thrix's crystalline voice chimed with relief. The plan worked. Jack allowed himself to relax slightly. Not completely. We still don't know who they were or what they wanted. As if in answer to his question, all the functioning screens in the corridor suddenly flickered and displayed the same image. A humanoid figure with an exoskeleton of shifting metal, its features obscured by an opaque helmet. Representatives of the Galactic Union, the figure spoke, its voice translated through the station's communication system. We are the Nexus Collective. Today was merely an assessment. The gathered representatives fell silent, listening intently. For centuries, we have observed your civilizations from the galactic periphery. Today's exercise was designed to evaluate your response to external threat. Jack stepped forward. And what conclusion have you reached? The figure seemed to focus directly on Jack. That humanity's paranoia may be the Galactic Union's salvation. Your species' contingency planning and ability to coordinate diverse biological entities presents an unexpected variable in our calculations. Is that why you targeted our diplomatic summit? Ambassador Krill demanded, neck frill extended aggressively. We sought to observe how the major powers would respond to crisis, the figure confirmed. The results were more impressive than anticipated. We will withdraw, for now. The transmission ended abruptly. Moments later, Luna reported that the unknown vessel had engaged what appeared to be a previously unidentified form of faster-than-light travel, and disappeared from all sensors. The corridor was silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Ambassador Thrix spoke. It appears, Ambassador Reynolds, that we owe humanity an apology. Your contingency planning just saved us all. Jack allowed himself a small smile. Plan 0M was always my favorite, to be honest. It's the only one based on cooperation rather than confrontation. And yet, added Glob, his blue mass rippling thoughtfully, it could not have existed without the detailed analysis of each species' capabilities that your other plans contained. A fair point, Jack acknowledged. Sometimes understanding potential weaknesses is the first step toward leveraging unique strengths. The diplomatic party made its way back to the council chamber, which had surprisingly survived intact. As they entered, Jack noticed the representatives speaking among themselves with new respect, not just for humanity, but for each other. Nothing united diverse groups like a common enemy. Ambassador Thrix called the session back to order, crystalline form glowing with formal patterns. Representatives, in light of today's events, I propose we establish an interspecies defense coordination committee. It seems clear that the greater galaxy holds threats we are unprepared for individually. Seconded, declared Ambassador Krill, neck frill pulsing with determination. The Triskelion Empire commits its military expertise to this endeavor. One by one, each representative pledged support for the initiative. Jack watched with satisfaction as centuries-old rivalries were temporarily set aside in the face of a greater concern. When his turn came, Jack stood. Earth commits its contingency planning resources to the committee, including tactical analyses and defense scenarios. He paused before adding with a smile, appropriately redacted of course. This drew the alien equivalent of chuckles from around the chamber. And perhaps, Jack continued more seriously, we should all consider that preparation isn't paranoia, it's prudence. The Nexus Collective may return, or other threats may emerge from deep space. Our strength lies in our diversity, and our willingness to plan together. As the session continued, Jack received a private message from Earth Central Command. Ambassador Reynolds, while revealing classified contingency plans represents a serious breach of protocol, the establishment of an interspecies defense committee has been a strategic objective for years. Well done. Return for debriefing at earliest opportunity. Jack smiled to himself. He wondered if Earth had a contingency plan for accidentally revealing contingency plans that ultimately achieved long-term diplomatic goals. If not, they certainly would now. Probably labeled Plan 17Z, the Reynolds Gambit. 2 weeks later, after extensive debriefings and diplomatic follow-ups, Jack found himself in his office on Earth, reviewing files for his next assignment. Luna's voice interrupted his reading. Ambassador, I've been authorized to share something you might find interesting. A classified file appeared on his screen, Contingency Plan X1, Protocol for Accidental Revelation of Contingency Plans. Jack burst out laughing. You're kidding me. We actually have a plan for that. Created 3 years ago, Luna confirmed. after a junior diplomat nearly revealed Plan 22C to the Arcturian ambassador during a state dinner. And no one thought to brief me on this, Jack asked, shaking his head in disbelief. The file notes that informing diplomats of this specific plan was deemed counterproductive, as it might create overconfidence in their ability to recover from such breaches. Jack leaned back in his chair, still chuckling. So even our contingency plans have contingency plans. That's humanity for you, paranoid to the core. Perhaps, Luna suggested, not paranoid enough. Intelligence reports indicate several species have begun developing their own comprehensive contingency systems. Good, Jack said with satisfaction. The more prepared we all are, the safer the galaxy will be. He paused before adding with a smile, though I bet none of them have plans for revealing their plans. Actually, Luna responded, the Vracs have already developed Plan Chittick 7, which translates roughly to what to do when you accidentally tell someone you've been planning their demise. Jack couldn't help but laugh again. It seemed humanity's paranoia was catching, and that might just be the best contingency plan of all.